I have presented my theories to physiologists and biomechanists, and they agree that the laws of physics and the body movement can happen naturally in the swing motion. The golf swing is based on centrifugal force. The trunk of the body is the center of the force. Control the center to control the motion. The arms, hands, and the golf club merely extend from the center symmetrically. A proper starting position and a proper finishing position allow the momentum of the mass, that is, the arms, hands, and the golf club, to flow as it may during the swing. This results in a perfectly natural and mechanically sound swing motion. I divide the swing motion into two general categories: voluntary actions, which are skills to be learned, and involuntary actions, which are the movements in the swing that happen naturally.
Okay, today we're going to be joined by Mr. Norm Moote, CPGA professional and a disciple of Mr. George Knudsen. How are you, Norm?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good, good, good. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, about your background and some of your professional experiences and the like.
Sure. Well, I kind of fell into golf accidentally. I played a lot of baseball, and then what happened was a lot of my friends went on to play at a higher level, and I didn't make the team, so I had to find something to do. So I started playing golf. I learned how to play in the hydro fields. We just kind of went out there and just hit ball from hydro tower to hydro tower, and eventually I developed a golf swing, developed an interest in the game. Joined the local municipal golf course here in Hamilton, Ontario. That's where I developed and played. Ended up going to Louisiana. That's where I went to school and played down there. Played the mini tours in Florida for a while. I struggled with my game and wondering what I was doing trying to make a living at this game. So then I met George Knudsen and started taking lessons from George. And I got a better understanding of the golf swing when I worked with George, but I still really wasn't developing. I was getting older. I wasn't getting to the point where I felt that I could be competitive. And he asked me if I thought about teaching. I'd never really thought about teaching golf before, but this was back in the days when teaching pros in Canada anyways didn't really exist. It's more popular in the States, but I took him up on it after a year of working with him, and I fell in love with it. I've been teaching ever since 1983 full-time, and there's nothing else I'd rather be doing.
Oh, that's great. I guess we can't consider it work if we enjoy it that much, right?
That's right. And, I get more satisfaction of giving lessons than I ever did out of playing because, when you're playing, you play for yourself. But when you're teaching, it's totally giving, and it's a great feeling to know that you're helping other people improve or play better golf.
That's great. I mean, that's giving back is part and parcel, I think, of what humanity should be about.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about some of your struggles, playing wise, and what led you to the point, or your experiences with Mr. Knudsen. For example, I was privy to one of your pamphlets that read when you first saw George. It was at a CPGA symposium, I imagine. And he was one of the guest speakers?
Yeah, it was a clinic. Basically what happened was George was he just finished the tour, and he decided he wanted to start teaching. And he used to give us assistant pros at the time free clinics. It'd be like one every month or so. A friend of mine went up to see him. This is how it all happened. And says, "Oh, I just had a lesson from George Knudsen. It was amazing. You got to go to the next class." And I figured, well, I've had lessons from different people in the past, and it was all the same. What they would do is the ball fight with hands or something to fix whatever the ball was doing, then it would cause another problem. So I really wasn't learning anything. But when I went to see George the first time, it all made sense. I wanted to know, I had a simple question. That was, what causes a good shot and what causes a bad shot? And no one could tell me that. What they do is they just watch the result. Whereas George was able to put, I guess you could call it, labels on things. He was able to give me an idea as to why I hit a good shot or why I hit a poor shot and how to fix it. You couldn't always fix it at that moment, but at least you knew what caused that ball to go in the trees or into the water or right down the fairway.
And so you went to see George, and I think I gathered that you were on the brink of just giving up golf at that time. What was going on?
I no one could tell me what was causing what I was doing, and I was ready to quit. And when I went to see George, he gave me sort of I guess you could call it a roadmap as to what I needed to do. And I just basically felt totally committed to his method of instruction, and it's what I still teach today. It totally. I remember one time I was on the range with George. George eventually asked me to work for him, and I remember saying to him, "George, my goal one day is to do this as well as you." And he kind of laughed at me. Well, I got to tell you, I'm nowhere near his level, but I'm a lot closer today than I was in 1983. I just don't know if I'm going to live long enough to get to his level. But he was really something to watch. I've never seen anybody hit the ball as well as he did.
Well, I mean, he's legendary. His ball striking, his ball striking is legendary worldwide, despite the fact that he didn't win that many events on tour.
Yeah, he won 9 events. 9 PGA Tour events, finished second in the Masters, and I think it was 69 or something like that. He told me that last day, the final round of the Masters, he hit every green in regulation. The longest putt he had all day was 10 feet and didn't make one of them. Wow. He was the absolute worst putter I've ever seen in my life. I could actually kick the ball closer than he could putt. But you know what? When you hit it as close as he did to the green or to the flag, you didn't have to be a good putter. He was just so good. I remember playing with him at the National, and it was a total privilege to be there watching his ball striking, the way he would work the shot, shape shots, and you just don't see that. I never saw Hogan play, but I get the feeling that's what it would have been like to watch someone like Ben Hogan, just kind of hitting whatever shot he needed to hit to get the job done.
Well, I think George or Mr. Knudsen, Mr. Hogan took Mr. Knudsen under his wing to some extent, from what I understand. So he
did.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. No, he was definitely a disciple of many guys back then that were disciples of Hogan, but they said that Knudsen knew Hogan's swing more than Hogan. Wow. But there was 3 guys that really helped George develop his golf swing. The first guy obviously was Hogan. That was the main guy. The second guy was Jimmy DeMerit, and the third guy was Tommy Bolt. Those 3 guys really inspired George to swing. And it was interesting how it came about. When he talked to Hogan, Hogan said it was all in the legs. It's all knees, from the knees down. It's all footwork. DeMerit was all hips. You got to get the waist or the belt buckle to the target, that kind of stuff. And Bolt was shoulders. You got to get the shoulders to the target. So George put all those 3 things together and came up with his concept. You got to get your entire body to face the target. It was a very interesting thing. And I felt so privileged to be one of the only 2. There's myself and another fellow named Dave Castellan, who were the only 2 guys who actually who were there to see Knudsen's whole method evolve.
And well, yeah, he developed this method. I think, and I've mentioned this before on my blog, that he left us kind of stranded. I think it's incomplete in the sense that there was still a lot more work to be done.
It was. And, his whole idea was, I remember he wanted to sort of standardize the way people taught. He felt, if you took tennis lessons anywhere in the world, there was a standardized way of teaching. There was various levels that people would go through. Skiing was the same thing. However, golf, he felt, was all over the map. People all had different ideas as to how to communicate it. He just wanted to put together a simple way for the average golfer, or even the experienced golfer, to develop and play better golf. And he first approached a lot of the guys from the CPGA, tried to get them on side with it, but the guys had their ways of doing things, and they weren't willing to. And they were successful with it. They weren't willing to give up what they were doing. And when he started doing his first video, that was just an introductory video. That first video, the only video he ever did, was just a start. He was going to do more after that. And then unfortunately, he, as you know, got diagnosed with cancer, and so he got his book done, which kind of put the pieces together. But there's things missing out of the book. Like, I remember standing on the range with George and watching him teach, and it was very, very great. It was very neat because he would teach the lesson, and I would observe, and I would just kind of help him out with, like just go through the lines and work with people. But I remember asking questions, George, why'd you explain it like this, or why'd you explain it like that? So I really got an understanding, or I guess you could say an appreciation for what he was doing. And I feel very fortunate to be one of the only couple guys that were there during those days to see that.
Wow.
And he was going to do more. He was going to do more videos. He was going to I just told him, George, whatever you don't do a video on putting, because you're the worst putter in the world.
Well, from what I understand, he would play with Mo Norman, and the competition was who could hit the most pins during the course of an 18-hole round.
Oh, yeah. Mo used to come up to the range, like, I don't know much about Mo, but he used to drift around. He was like a vagabond, so to speak. He would go from golf course to golf course. And George had nothing but respect for Mo. And Mo would come up there and hit balls, and he put on a show. Like, he was really something to watch. He'd call these shots. He'd hit it off Coke bottles. And I remember one guy, he'd hit it off a tee, and he goes, Mo, when you hit a ball off the tee, how come the tee doesn't fly out of the ground? He goes, well, I'm not hitting the tee, I'm hitting the ball. Why would the tee go? I'm hitting the ball. He was comical. He was something to see.
I've also saw this story where you said that Wilson sent George a set of irons that were X500 shafts. And
oh, it's ridiculous. His clubs are so heavy and so stiff. I don't know how he got them. They were just, he had them counterbalance too, like whatever. I can't remember exactly what his specs were, but he had weight put into the handle to counterbalance. So the dead weight was like D0, but the swing weight was some ridiculous number, and the shafts were like super stiff. And if you take up one of his clubs and you try to swing, it was like swinging a tree trunk. It was so heavy. But he said, I don't want this thing wavering. I want this ball to go directly where I want it to go. And it wasn't about distance. I mean, George could hit a 3-wood closer than most guys could hit a wedge. He was that good.
Do you think that had something to do with the methodology? In other words, this center-based swing, a centrifugal force type of swing. You want to kind of feel the weight of the club and not overshoot it?
Absolutely. And, the thing I find today with the manufacturers is they're going lighter with equipment, thinking, well, the lighter the club, the more club head speed you can generate. But George thought it's mass times velocity. So it was a combination of a couple of things. You don't want something too light. And as I mentioned, his stuff and Mo's stuff, and he was telling me even Hogan's stuff was very, very heavy. His equipment was heavy because you wanted for a centrifugal force to do the work. George said, all I had to do was get the club in motion, and the club did the job. I just had to kind of hold on. And he would hit golf balls, and he felt that because of the way the club and because of how loose he was, he felt his arms were being pulled out of the sockets because the clubs were so heavy. It was really interesting.
Wow. So can we actually call you the link between Knudsen and what we have? Are you the only link we have left to George Knudsen? I mean, there are a couple of other people.
No, there's one other guy I would say that would be like. What happened was there was myself, there was Dave Castellan. We were the two main guys that worked with George. He had a couple of guys that worked part-time here and there, but we were the two main guys that actually saw this whole thing evolve. And Dave is still around. He's up in Deerhurst area, which is North Ontario. He's teaching at a place up there. And I'm locally more towards Toronto. But I would say we're the only two that really teach this thing the way Knudsen intended it to be taught, that I know of.
Okay, so if I were to want to experience your tutelage, if I, for example, see, I'm a big Knudsen fan, and I enjoy reading in fact, I work with Greg McCatton in California, and has the same type of concepts as George Knudsen. But if I were to, I know you have a website. I know that you are actually based out of Canada, and you're teaching in Canada. You offer online courses also?
I do. I use software called Dartfish, which is, I think, the best video software for doing sports analysis of people's, whether it be golf or whatever swing, whatever it is you're doing. And people can actually send me their swing. I'll analyze it and send them back what's called a media book, or I can do a video. What a media book is it shows their key positions with my comments. I might verbally talk about what I'm seeing, or I might type in what I'm seeing, or they can send me a clip and I might split screen them and draw some lines and give them like a movie and then send that back to them. I do lessons. I did a lesson not too long ago from a guy in, I think it was Sweden. I've done lessons all over the world. A lot of people, like you're saying, are very much into the Knudsen thing. I'm actually quite surprised he's as well known as he is throughout the world. But I get comments all the time. People wanting to buy his video from all parts of the world. So I guess he's made his mark, definitely.
Well, with the advent of the internet, now information flows so freely that I think that people are, I mean, I personally knew about Knudsen because I'm kind of a golf hound.
Yeah.
And I've read all the books, and, you know, I was a big Hogan type of guy, and, you know, and Hogan and Knudsen and you know, the whole correlation there.
Yeah.
And basically you would be following the Knudsen guidelines in your swing analysis and the like, wouldn't you?
That's right. I still teach it, like I mentioned, the way George intended to be taught. Everything I teach today, nothing I give is original. And I've read all the stuff. There's so much stuff out there that's come along since the days of George, but George's stuff still makes the most sense to me. I find a lot of the difference between what George teaches and what everybody else teaches is simply this. At one point, they will reference the club to the ball, where George never does. George always references balance and target. Never, the ball just gets in the way of emotion. That's all it is. This is not a hand-eye game. It's not like, you know, you got to make it fit. The ball just gets in the way. So if you're thinking of ball, you'll hit the ball, but it may not go where you want it to go. So the objective is to go through the ball and think about where you need to end up. If your body faces the trees, that's where the ball is going to go. If it faces the green, that's where it's going to go.
Okay. So, and how much do you think is missing in the Natural Golf Swing, the book itself?
I think when I look at it, I know George was having some health issues when he was writing it and everything else. I think he got most of the points across, but it's not explained as clearly as he did when he taught it. For an example, when he talks about things like passive hands, people look at that and they say, you know, the hands aren't passive, but, you know, there's voluntary actions, involuntary actions, and yes, the wrists do cock, the hands do release, but it's involuntary. It's something you don't have to really think about. And George had a series of swing drills. If you've read his book, you'll see these drills in the back of the book, and those drills are what I still teach today. But the drills that he teaches are not the golf swing. They're just the components of the swing. And he had one that he called the hello there drill. And people would swing trying to make that part of their swing. And it's not the golf swing. It's just a component. And part of the things that what I do is I clarify these things for people when I'm working with them. And it's really interesting. I've had people say, oh, I took lessons from George 30 years ago, and he totally screwed up my game. I said, oh, how did you do that? And they tell me all these stories. And I said, well, what you're doing, you have an understanding of what he's saying, but you're taking it to a point where it's too mechanical. You have to arrive at the finish. You can't put yourself to the finish, things like that. And so that's part of what I do is I help clarify some of the things that George meant that isn't really clear in the book. I've thought about doing an ebook myself. I'm not much of a writer. I'm just compiling stuff and everything else. But one day I hope to finish it off and to maybe clear up some of the misconceptions that are seen in Knudsen's teaching and make it clearer for people that follow his ideas.
Well, we look. Well, if you do write an ebook, I'm definitely your first customer.
Okay, no I'll send
order one. So, if we wanted to, and we will be providing a link to your site in addition to this right underneath the interview so that people can check in with you and see what it is you have. It's a pretty robust site and it's pretty well done. I perused it before we came on. And,
well, I have an Ask Norm blog thing in there, but I'm not really a computer guy or anything like that. But I haven't had a whole lot of people go on that. I had a couple guys go on and ask me various questions about it, but I don't probably man my site as much as I should. I look at it more in the winter than I do in the summer. I'm quite busy in the summer, so I don't really have a chance to get to it. That's one of the things I hope to change next year, is to spend more time, at my site, and hopefully, answering more questions if they come my way.
If somebody were to try to get an internet lesson with you, they would have to. Would they send you the video, or how does it work?
Yeah.
What's the process?
Basically, what they do is they go to my site, and there's a fee you pay, and then it gives you instructions. You would download the video to me. I would see it. I would then analyze it, give you my ideas as to what you need to do to fix it, and then I would send it back to you.
Oh, great.
It's
awesome. All right, Norm, is there anything else you'd like to add that we didn't cover?
I don't know. I think we've covered pretty well everything. Unless you have any questions regarding George. I mean, he was an awesome guy. He was a very intense guy when it came to, he was committed to what he was doing, but he's not somebody you'd want to mess around with. He had a bit of an anger to him, but I respect him. Yeah, he did. He had an edge. I respected him totally. I remember those days. I used to love those days when we got rained out, and he'd be out there, and he'd hit balls. And it was just a pleasure to watch. And he'd say, okay, I'm going to hit a low fade. He did a thing called the 9-ball clinic. Are you familiar with the 9-ball clinic?
No, I'm not.
Okay, he hit one ball straight, regular trajectory. One ball low, regular, at the target, straight. One ball high. And then he hit fades, same thing. Then he hit draws. Then he start mixing it up. So the balls are going all over the place, but they all end up at the same spot. It was really something to see.
Incredible. What kind of sound? What kind of sound did it make? This is what there's always like Hogan had this distinct sound, and I mean,
yeah.
And I'd go to the PGA events, and there were guys that you could tell, and this is amongst the top players in the world. I'm at major championship golf, and I'm sitting on a range, and there's always a couple of guys that have that sound that turns heads. I'm wondering, did Knudsen have that sound?
It was a unique sound, and Mo Norman had the same sound. My sound doesn't sound anything like that. When I hit the ball, it just sounds like a club hitting the ball. But when they hit the ball, it was, I guess the best way to describe it is crisp. There was just a little sound, and the ball it was just so crisp. I don't know how else to describe it.
Wow.
It was something to see. But if you ever, and I'll tell you another thing about George, when he used to be at Oakdale, which is the course that kind of sponsored him. They were out of Toronto there, and at the range, in the distance, there was this apartment building, and there was an elevator shaft that went up the center of the building. And one of the things that George used to do is, when he'd hit golf balls, he'd hit the ball up the shaft, down the shaft, up. There was no curvature unless he wanted it to have curvature. He was just so precise, and he made it look so easy. It was just he made it look too easy. It was something to see. Too bad you didn't get to see him hit a golf ball.
No, but as he played the tour, his swing developed, I imagine. And by the time he retired, was it the same swing that he was using on tour, or was this an optimized vision of what he thought what the ideal swing should be?
I think when he left the tour, it was a sort of a toned down version of what he did. I don't think it was as dynamic as when he was on the tour. Like when I used to watch him play, and the times that I play with him, he just looked like he was waving the club through the ball, and he did whatever he wanted to do. And he didn't hit it very far, but like I said, he didn't have to. He hit it so accurate. I remember the National, which is the course that he played at, there was one hole there where, I was never terribly long, but I could hit it usually up to him or a little past him at times. Mind you, he was much older than I was at the time. But there was one hole where there was the hill on the right, and there was these two big pine trees. And what he would do is he'd aim to the right. It was a long par 4. And he'd hit this thing off the hill, and he'd just scoot it out there, and he'd be like 50 yards by me. So when he needed to get out there, he knew how to get it out there. And he had that kind of control and accuracy to knock it out there a long ways. But he wasn't about distance. George was about accuracy and control. Like he often said, you have to give up control to gain control, and he was just very loose and very relaxed when he played. It was almost, to the lack of a better word, it was almost boring to watch him hit the ball because he hit it so good.
Good golf is boring. There's no real drama.
Yeah.
Good
Yes,
golf
it
is
is.
just, you know.
My golf's boring. I make my golf exciting. Like I'm hitting it all over the place.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, you're on safaris here. You're getting
That's
bit
right.
by a tick over there. You're avoiding a bear.
That's it. All that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's,
right.
that's not good golf. It's dramatic golf, but it's not good golf.
You get your money's worth that way.
Yeah, you get to see a lot of the course. I've been there already myself.
But I don't know. I think that George was just in my opinion, his ideas. He didn't really have a method. If you had to break it down into what George thought about, first thing was balance. You had to have balance throughout the entire motion, and you had to focus and commit more to target, not to ball, and that was it. The more targets you hit, the better you score. He often described, concentration as dealing with the present, and anxiety is dealing with the past and the future. So the score, thinking about your score, you're creating anxieties. Let's say you're playing and you're 4 over after 9 or whatever the case is, and you're saying, well, I got to start getting. You're creating anxieties. What you got to do is you got to think about what you have to do at that moment, which is, where's my target? Get my body to the target, swing to the target. That's simple.
I mean, it sounds simple, but most people, or most golfers like myself, we have a very hard time keeping it in the here and now, and playing.
Oh yeah, your head gets.
It's you're on the verge of shooting a career round, or you need a certain amount. You got a par in the next X amount of holes going forward. And it's hard to drift away from where you are at the present, and I think that's what.
But if you know your swing that well, you don't drift away from the present. Like he said, the game's it's about targets, and what he would do is he would go through his pre-shot routine. He'd look at the target. He'd bring his head back. His eyes are looking at the ball, but his mind's eye sees the target, and all he tries to do is put the pitcher back. So all he's doing is focusing on target, and that's the difference that I think that George, his whole swing and teaching philosophy, how it differs from everybody else. Everybody else that I know of, they all have good points to them, to their methods and everything else, but they are focusing to some extent on their target. The only guy that came close, and George said this to me, to his ideas was Jimmy Ballard.
Wow.
He was the guy that was closest to George's teaching, but he still focused on target, on ball.
That's interesting. I could never correlate the two. I worked for a company that bought Jimmy Ballard golf schools once, and
Oh yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of things, coincidences. For example, the head movement. And I know
Yeah.
George says the head has nowhere to go except where the body takes it.
That's right.
And Ballard had.
He had a lot of swing going on there, yeah. But when you think about the connection thing that Ballard had,
Right.
like the hands, arms, and the club is connected to your center and all that kind of stuff. That's very similar to what George talked about.
Right.
And you'll find when you talk to, or when you start reading all these various golf magazines or golf or videos, what have you, there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's bits here that are good, bits there that are good. But to me, Knudsen's way of teaching makes the most sense to me. So that's why I still teach it today.
Have you developed any good players using this technique? In other words, from scratch, or hopefully have you worked?
Well, one of my success stories, I guess you'd call it, I had this one fellow. I've been working with him for about 10 years. This fellow's well-to-do. He's got lots of bucks. He's very successful in business. He came to me. He was about a 30 handicap. He's now a 3.
Wow.
And he plays competitively in like the Canadian seniors and the Ontario seniors events or mid-amateurs, that kind of stuff. And he's probably my best student. I have a lot of people that have come and gone. I work with a couple of Canadian tour players, but nobody that's, like on tour making, gazillions of dollars. No one like that.
Okay. Well, hopefully when people start to realize that this type of instruction is out there, because one of the things that that I know my readers very interested in Mr. Knudsen and his methodologies. I mean, we're basically interested in good ball striking, and he was one of the best.
Yep.
And you know, we're left hungry for more information. I have the video. I have his book.
Right.
Um, I consider Martin Chuck a friend. He did a video um, recently about what George taught him, and he was a junior golfer under Knudsen's tutelage for about 10 years. From the time he was a junior golfer to the time I guess he went to college. So we're trying to piece together as much as we can about George Knudsen and try to, you know, project his legacy forward to try to get more people to understand and to recognize
Sure.
what he left.
And the hard thing is his whole teaching philosophy was so simple. Like when he taught us to teach, what we had to do was watch from the knees down. We watched footwork, see where the weight was going on the feet. And when I find that a lot of people say, well, wait a second, there's got to be more to it than this. But that's what George thought. It was all about balance. Like if you were taking, let's say you're hitting golf balls in front of George and you went through his program and you're making some swings and you're hitting it off to the right or whatever the case is. He wouldn't even look at the ball. He'd just watch you and say, okay, hold your finish position. So you'd hold it. He goes, where's the weight on your front foot? You say, well, it's on the outside left with my foot. And he'd say, where's it supposed to be? He'd say, on the top of the foot. He goes, well, put the weight on top of the foot. We didn't have video back in those days. We didn't use all these things. It was all about, positioning, balance, where the weight is going. The length of your backswing, for an example, I'll tell you an interesting story. This a lot of people don't know. When George first went on tour, he was working with his golf swing and playing along. And the guys on tour used to say to George, you got to get the club back farther. You don't hit it very far. You got to get it back to parallel like Hogan. And so George knew Hogan. He went to Hogan. He said, Ben, how do you get the club back to parallel? And Hogan said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't take the club back to parallel. And George goes, well, yeah, you do. I got pictures. All the guys on tour are talking about the shafts down the target. How do you get it to parallel? He goes, I don't take the club to parallel. So then George asked him, well, what do you think about when you take the club back? Hogan said, all I do is rotate my body to the point where I feel the weight of the club on my thumbs. Once I feel that, I go as quick and as hard as I can to my target. So George is trying to figure that out. Okay, once the shaft gets slightly beyond perpendicular to the ground, you feel the weight of the club on your thumbs. But that's only like a half swing. And then Hogan says, I should let you know I'm double jointed. Gets his thumb, bends it back, practically touches his arm. So then George figured out, okay, he's got mass in his hands. Once he feels the weight of the club on his thumb, the mass goes one way, his body goes the other way. That's how he generates all that lag. It's a flexibility issue. Right. We all can't take the club back to these positions. We can only take it back to a position that our body allows it to go to. If we try to take it back farther, the swing breaks down. And you got to just swing within yourself, swing within balance. That is the number one thing, and balance is the key thing in the golf swing.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been struggling with balance myself for the past few days. I think I'm over-accelerating. I'm trying to get more than I need to out of the club. And
well, the easiest way to fix your balance, do you have a back, well, you're in New York. Do you have a backyard there? Probably not.
No, I have a...
Central Park down the road?
Central Park's a little far, but
okay.
There's a bunch of skyscrapers out the window. Maybe I can get on somebody's roof or something.
All right. Well, next time your local golf course, go to the range, put a tee in the ground, make a swing, try to hit the tee, but do it with your eyes closed.
Wow.
When your eyes are closed, you have better awareness of where your weight is, what your balance is. See, when your eyes are open, they'll make the adjustments to give you balance. But when your eyes are closed, you rely totally on your positions. We teach blind golfers to play. They have a great balance. They prove you don't need to keep your head down and eye on the ball. The ball just gets in the way.
Didn't George break 70 with his eyes closed?
That's right. That's right. And I remember when he did that video, the original video, they shot a little commercial for it. Titleist was involved with it. And we went to Glen Abbey. And I remember the guys were setting up, the cameras and all that stuff. And I was there basically just picking up the balls after he hit them out and that kind of thing and bringing them back to him. And I said, George, just go out there and loosen up. So he's out there. I'm not sure how far he was, but I know he had a 2 or 3 iron. And he's rifling these shots in there, hitting them like 2 or 3 feet from the flag. And I said, George, wait, hold those shots. Wait till we get the camera going. He goes, no, I got plenty more of these things. He would just swing so loose and relaxed. And he was so so into balance. It was unbelievable. He made it look simple. He really did. We all make it look difficult.
Yeah, I mean, guys like
But
that.
try that. Close your eyes, make some swings, see if the tee gets in the way, and see if you can do it without falling over.
So I should tee it up how high?
Just like you tee up a driver and take out maybe a 5-iron or something like that. Position the club behind the iron. Close your eyes, behind the tee. Close your eyes, make some swings. Think about where the weight is going on your feet. Try to connect your starting to a finish, and try to stay balanced. I'll tell you a funny story. I told a guy this years ago. I worked at a course called Lionhead. And Lionhead is a corporate golf place. It's one of these places where you get people coming in from all over the place. And one of the guys came in from Vancouver, and he was a sales guy. And he goes, I hate this game, but I got to learn to play it for business. I'm leaving tonight to go back home. Give me one lesson. I need to know everything one lesson. So I told him, about the starting position, the finishing position. I gave him some things to work on. Then I said, don't even think of playing. Don't even think of hitting a ball until you can stick a tee in your lawn, close your eyes, make a swing, clip the tee, and stay in balance. And let me know how it works out. So about a month later, he sends me a letter and says, that tip you gave me was unbelievable. I'm hitting the ball better than I ever thought I could hit it. There's only one problem. I can only hit it with my eyes closed. As soon as I open my eyes, I can't hit the ball. We see the ball, we react to it, whereas the ball just gets in the way. George used to call the ball the great intimidator. It's just a ball. Let it get in the way of the swing.
Wow.
The idea is to swing through the ball, not at it.
Well, that guy could have created some hustle, huh? I'll play with my eyes closed.
Yeah. Just think of it. First tee, you say, hey, I'd make $5 off everybody. Get this thing with my eyes. Who would take that bet?
Wow. That's incredible. So when George was finally, his intention was to go back and play the senior tour, wasn't it?
Yeah, because what happened was he felt the guys here in Canada weren't really getting on side with him with regards to his way of teaching. And so he thought, well, the best way to do it is go back on the senior tour, play and promote his video that way. And, the U.S. is a huge market, as you know. Sure. And so if he was out there playing, he can promote his teaching and he can do more videos. And he had full intent to do that. And then unfortunately, the cancer came back, and that basically ended the whole thing.
That's sad. And once George was gone, you continued on.
What I did was, when I left, I didn't know what to do because people didn't come up there to see me. They came up to see George. And teaching back in Canada, we didn't have golf academies then. He was the first guy in Canada to put together a golf school. Before then, it was just, the odd guy at a driving range or maybe your local club pro giving you lessons, that kind of stuff. But there were really no golf academies up here in Canada. And so I didn't know what to do. So I got out of golf for a couple of years, and I did other things. I thought, I really miss it. So I kind of got back into it, and I started working at various places, and it just kind of kept evolving from there. And I did miss it, and I'm glad I went back to it. I totally enjoy it. I have so much information that was given to me, and it's just a pleasure to share it with so many golfers.
Wow. Well, Norm, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh,
like
you too.
I said, we're going to provide a link to your site.
Great.
And for our readers to peruse and look around and see what they find, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of interest, and hopefully we can stay in touch.
I hope so. If you're ever up in Canada, we'll get out and play.
Okay.
Don't come up here in November, December. It's too cold.
Yeah, well, there won't be any mosquitoes, that's for sure.
There won't be mosquitoes, that's true.